everyone could take their seats, please. I would like to call to order tonight's regular meeting of the Board of Education of CUSD 201, Tuesday, April 25th, 2017. If we could have roll call, please.
Ms. Ambrose. Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mrs. Notbush.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
We could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 11th, 2017 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the April 11th, 2017 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Are there any public comments? Okay, we will now have procedural items. First is the presentation of the election results.
Included in the board book are the certified election results from the April 2017 general election, and there have been no changes since the actual preliminary. And so there's nothing formally the board has to do. It's just we acknowledge that we have received the official results from DuPage County.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will have the appointment of the President Pro Tem and Secretary Pro Tem. I would like to nominate Gary Armstrong as the President Pro Tem. Is everybody, and then I'll do a motion.
And Judy is the
And,
secretary.
oh, that was gonna do that.
Okay, all right.
And, okay, and then as Judy as the secretary? Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to nominate Gary Armstrong as the President Pro Tem.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to nominate Judy Wilson as the Secretary Pro Tem.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We will now do the oath of office for the new board members. So we're gonna do 2 and 2. Okay.
Read, Joel.
I, state your name,
I, Joel Price,
I'm Ray Charlton.
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear
Or affirm and
that
affirm
I will faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education
the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education
of Community Unit School District 201
of Community Unit
School District 201
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the
Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois
and the laws of the State of Illinois,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I further swear or affirm that
further swear
I shall respect taxpayers' interests,
that I will
I shall respect taxpayers' interests
interests
by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion
I shall encourage and respect the free expression
of opinion
of opinion
by my fellow board members
by my fellow board members
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize
I shall recognize
that a board member has no legal authority
that a board member has no legal authority
as an individual,
as an individual,
and that decisions can be made
and that decisions can be made
only by a majority vote
only by a majority vote
and I shall abide by majority decisions
and I shall abide by majority decisions
of the board
of the board
while retaining the right to seek changes
while retaining the right to seek changes
in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
in such
such decisions through ethical
and constructive
and
channels.
constructive channels.
Welcome back. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Raise your right hands, please. I state your name.
I,
Matt Johnson,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge
that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education
the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education
of Community Unit School District 201
of Community Unit School District 201
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois,
and the laws of the State of Illinois,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I further swear that
I further swear that
I shall respect taxpayers' interests
I shall respect taxpayers' interests
by serving as a faithful protector
by serving as a faithful protector
of the school district assets.
of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression
I shall encourage and respect the free expression
of opinion by my fellow board members
of opinion by my fellow board members
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
and others who seek a hearing before the board,
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize
I shall recognize
that a board member has no legal authority as an individual,
that a board member has no legal authority as an individual,
and that decisions can be made
and that decisions can be made
only by a majority vote at a public board meeting.
only by a majority vote at a public meeting.
And I shall abide by the majority decisions of the board
And I shall abide by
majority decisions
of the board
while retaining the right to seek changes
while retaining the right to seek changes
in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
in such decisions as ethical.
and ethical channels.
Congratulations. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Does he have?
Yeah,
Gary,
I'm sorry?
let's just.
Okay. Is this right here?
Yep.
So the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn sin dine.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
And you call the next meeting.
Right here?
I'll call the meeting to order.
Okay. I'd like to call to order and roll call, please, for this meeting.
Ms. Ambrose. Mr. Armstrong.
Here?
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mrs. Notbush.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
The chair will entertain a motion. Okay, I see where we're at now. So, at this time, we need to, procedural action item for election of officers. I will start the conversation, by saying I think we've had some pretty good representation as president with Marie Charlton, and vice president is Joel Price, and secretary is Mara Notbush. So I would like to nominate all three of those to continue in their roles. I don't know if anybody else has any other nominations that they'd like to make. So then, the chair will entertain a motion to nominate Marie Charlton as President of Education President for a 2-year term.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
The chair will entertain a motion to nominate Joel Price as Board of Education Vice President for a 2-year term.
So moved.
Second.
I have a roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Knappus?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
The chair will entertain a motion to nominate Mara Notbush as Board of Education Secretary for a 2-year term.
So moved.
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Knappus?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's done.
Okay, now we will look to the appointment of board committees. So we have 4 committees, and I wanted to find out who might be interested. We have finance, policy, facilities, and public relations. Anybody want to?
Well, I've been serving on the Facility Committee and the Finance Committee. I'm happy to stay there unless other people are so inclined, but I'm happy to be there.
Fine?
Policy.
You want
I stand
policy?
Policy as well.
Okay, Joel and Matt on policy, okay.
And I'm on finance.
Finance. Judy?
I'm good where I'm at.
Okay. I'll do public relations again then. Let's just put Lori in all the rest.
That's what happens when you don't show up, you know.
Right. Okay, we'll check with her on that. Okay. Then establishment of board meeting dates, times, and places. Kevin, do you want to
Sure.
talk about that one?
There's 2 options, and option A has just 1 meeting in March, and the original reason, if we normally go with our 2nd and 4th meetings, when we have a month with 2 meetings, then February, we would have ended up at some point in time having back-to-back meetings in March because of where spring break hits. And so that calendar was drafted with just 1 meeting in March, March 20th. And then also, the last couple of years, we gotten away from 2 meetings in May because we kind of ran into conflicts with graduation. So there's 1 meeting in May. Option B, if we go to the 1st and 3rd meetings in March and February, then we're able to maintain 2 meetings in March and February. And so the second, option B, provides 2 meetings in February, the 1st and 3rd Tuesday, and then the 1st and 3rd Tuesday in March. And then in May, in part because of where the recognition of some meeting would fall, it ends up being a little early. Next year, we think we can go back to a 2-meeting cycle in May. So it's kind of up to the board then, if you want to go with the A, which we have, again, just 1 meeting in March, 1 meeting in May, or option B, where we would be able to have the 2 meetings in.
Well, and there's one more thing. This all started, Kevin and I were talking about this when we were in our agenda meeting. So, right now, we have 1 meeting in November and 1 meeting in December. So I just wanted to say, do we want to continue with that? And then there's differences in the February dates too, remember? Because that's the same thing. So one option has them on the 13th and 27th. The other one has it on the 6th and the 20th.
Right.
And then the same thing. So does everybody see the difference here on all that? Did you see all that? And then the May, because this year, option A had the student and staff reorganization on May 15th. Did you find out when the high school graduation is next?
It looks like where everything's gonna fall, then it should be okay.
Okay, so if we went with May 22nd as a student and staff, the high school graduation would be after that? Okay. So, anyway, conversations.
Well, I'm okay with option B. You know, when you're into the school year like that in March, I think it's kind of important to have that extra meeting there. There is a number of topics that come up at this time of the year or at that time of the year that are important. So I think I would prefer option B, but
I would prefer option A, and you know, I think most of us have Tuesdays blocked off, so if we needed to add, don't have any problem with adding an additional meeting. But sometimes some of the meetings are a little bit thin, and we could almost combine them. you know, it just depends on the topics, and we really won't know that until, you know, we get around to that time frame. So if we're flexible and we're willing to add, I'm fine with going with lesser, and then with the idea that we're all, you know, agreeable to add if we need to add for particular topics.
And I would agree with Joel. Same.
I had, my thought was, well, why don't you guys go, and then
I actually agree with Joel also. I'd rather go with this and add a meeting if needed.
okay,
I would agree with option A as well.
okay. The one thing that I had thought about was similar to Gary's, and also, checking about, if we have enough time to do the approvals that we need to do for any bills and things like that.
Yeah, I
So
think
would
so.
we-
I mean, as long as we've been doing that, you know, the board's been giving me authorization, and it's really for, you know, known quantities. It's for the utilities, it's for things that we're paying, you know, doing grants or things like that. So things that, you know, I'm very confident that are appropriate expenditures for the district.
Okay. And then, so option A has the meetings, then we have, so that was mostly for March, and then for May 15th, and just one, May 15th, and not two? May 8th and 22nd, is that right? Okay. All right. The chair will entertain a motion that the regular meetings of the Community Unit School District 201 Board of Education be held as identified in option A, notice schedule of regular meetings of the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 201 as presented. And roll call, please.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Notbush?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Appointment of SACID Board of Control and Governing Board Representative. We need a representative and an alternate.
So I'm fine with staying on as the representative.
Okay. Do we have an
Well,
alternate?
I guess on both
Right.
boards, because it's the two boards now.
Okay.
Judy was the
Judy, you were the alternate. Did you want to
Be the
continue with that? Okay. Thank you. Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to appoint Joel Price as District 201's representative to the SACID Board of Control and Judy Wilson as an alternate.
So moved.
Second?
And roll call, please.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now appointment of IASB representative. Or representative. Gary, you did that before?
I had
Did you-
served in the role. I'm happy to continue unless somebody else has some desire to do it. Otherwise, I'm very happy to represent us.
Okay. Thank you, Gary.
Congratulations.
The chair will entertain a motion to appoint Gary Armstrong as District 201's Illinois Association of School Boards Delegate Representative.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Roll call, sorry.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, consent agenda. Any comments or questions? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations. 2, approval of Westmont High School pool rental. 3, approval of audit engagement letter. 4, approval of April 2017 expenditure report. And 5, ratification of March 2017 regular payroll.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you want to?
Sure. The library program presentation, we're not going to have that this evening. This is actually tied to a grant that the library's received, and it's no longer a requirement of the grant. We had it in our calendar, and it was something that we did on an annual basis, but it's no longer required. And And so, at a future meeting, if the board would like, the Media Center could do a presentation similar to what the WTA does with Celebrating Success, but it's no longer required of the grant.
Okay, then we move to curriculum update.
Good evening, Board of Education, and Mr. Carey, thanks for inviting me to talk about the work that we've been doing this year. I'm going to provide a theme. The theme of this presentation is going to be professional development, and I have my team members here. Instructional coach Tracy Billy from Miller, instructional coach Laura Riley from junior high, and then Karen Niemeyer has a family engagement. She may or may not be here in time to talk a little bit. So we have been doing a great deal of professional development with all of the changes that we've been engaged in these past couple of years, and I'm using this graphic to try and illustrate the complexity of all of the work that we've been doing. Teachers are currently faced with a tremendous amount of change that takes a great deal of time and effort, and that includes new standards, new methods of evaluation, integration of technology tools. And the work that we've been doing is focused on improving our instructional practices and improving student achievement through that change in instructional practices. The teachers are focused on changing the way we do things in school. Previous to this period of time with the new standards, really teaching and learning was more about memorizing facts and focused on the content in our textbook, but now we are building our curriculum from the ground up, which is a significant amount of work and a really complex amount of change. So we are engaged in a tremendous amount of professional development, and that professional development really is impacted heavily by our instructional coach program. So the instructional coach program, which really came to be in about this is our third year, and this graphic kind of illustrates what the coach program does that's different than our traditional methods of professional development. Instructional coach professional development is job embedded. It's ongoing. It's something that the teachers experience as part of their daily work that they do, and the coach, for example, our coaches provide about a total of 200 professional hours, contact hours with our teachers throughout the year. Coaches have interacted with 100% of our teachers, and almost that of our instructional staff, our certified teaching staff. This graphic illustrates the research behind the instructional coach model. All of the work that they do is all research-based, and the instructional coach program itself is research-based. So we have a model in this district that is based on a great deal of research and time and attention to best practices and programs that other districts have been using, as well as empirical studies and authors that have helped refine this program. Although the coaches' roles in the district are so varied, and the work that they do, it touches every part of teaching and learning, as a team we sort of define the roles in four different kind of buckets. Okay, so the classroom supporter, that co-learner piece, provides direct support to teachers in their classroom by co-planning, modeling lessons, conferring with teachers, watching teachers work, and then helping our teachers be reflective practitioners. The learning facilitator role provides instructional knowledge on the skills and resources needed to change our instructional practices and to build our curriculum. And the coaches work collaboratively with teachers and administrators to provide professional development that impacts the entire district. So this team is really the team that has implemented all of our district-wide professional development. And one really important role is this idea of helping teachers work through the use of data. So the learning support coach is the catalyst that moves teachers beyond what data means to how data impacts what we do for our students. And I'm going to kind of delve into this a little bit with some more detail in the time we spend together tonight. So the focus of the coaches and the professional development with regard to the core instruction. So I'm going to give you a kind of an overview of what that looks like to give you some context and some background knowledge and how we engage in new methods of assessment and learning. So I'll start with English language arts because that's what we've been working on for the past 2 years in earnest. And this graphic will illustrate the complexity of the English language arts standards. This is a summary of what we refer to as the strands. So each one of these strands has a specific number of standards attached to it. So for example, there's 4 strands in reading. There's 9 standards in reading literature and 9 standards in reading informational text. There's about 28 standards within those strands that specifically mention or have a component that needs digital media or technology. And in addition to that, when we work on our curriculum and our teaching and learning, we integrate all of those strands and the various standards together in a comprehensive literacy model. So we don't teach reading, writing, speaking, listening, foundational skills in isolation. Students engage in learning experiences that integrate all of that together. And that's a very complex process. Building a program that prepares our students for the future takes a lot of time and effort, and the manner in which we have our Common Core standards and our curriculum laid out is very different than the kind of model that we've been working with in the past. So the administrators and the coaches and the teachers, we all need to be brought up to speed on this content. We all need to understand what the best practices are, what other districts are doing. We need to see student examples. We need to understand how to build assessments. So what we, as a team, we've been doing is we've been working with an instructional leader, consultant. Her name is Kelly Dobeck. She's been an expert in literacy for many years. She's a researcher. She's working on her PhD. And she's worked with many other districts, and she's been able to bring us, really move us forward. And we spent a great deal of time with her. We meet with her as grade level teams for half days, 3 times a year for each grade level in K through 5, and she's met with also the junior high as a team. So she's been able to help us accomplish much more than we would have been able to as individuals by attending isolated workshops. So she's been the coach of myself and the coaches. This illustrates the complexity of the work that we're doing in terms of just deconstructing the standards so that we know what learning looks like. How will we know if our students are meeting those standards? We determined that we had a gap in our phonics program. So Kelly helped us develop our own phonics scope and sequence based on materials that we had on hand. We've developed units. We focus on research-based instructional practices. Kelly's gone into a classroom and modeled some lessons for us. And with the coaches, we've been able to curate instructional resources that are used as part of the teaching and learning in the district. So the idea of thoroughly examining the Common Core standards and really refining our assessment methods has been a really complex process. And so this kind of illustrates that we have been revamping our curriculum over the past several years, and that process is never ending. Our curriculum maps are constantly being reworked. Our unit plans are being developed, and the scope and sequence for phonics is something that touches the early elementary teachers and students to make sure that they are brought up to speed. As a result of some of the work that we've been doing, we determined that what we really need is a vertical alignment of all of our curriculum standards. So we met as a curriculum team a couple of years ago, and we kind of reflected on where our weaknesses are, and one thing that we wanted to really leverage was the fact that we're a unit district and that we have access to teachers kindergarten through high school. So we designed an inquiry group, and we call it the Teacher Academy. And the goal is to have these vertical teams of teachers provide seamless transition between our standards and our assessment methods so that there are no gaps. So as an example, we've had Teacher Academies for 3 different content areas. And I'll start with kind of what we've been working on for this in particular is relevant for English language arts. We started last summer, and we built a curriculum that laid out the reading standards K through 12, and the teachers deconstructed were designed for the students, and we looked at our maps and our teaching practices and the way we assess those standards to confirm that the students move through those standards in a manner that prepares them for the next level. The benefit of working K through 12 and vertically articulating our standards and our teaching practices is that we have a curriculum that's sustainable, that we know where the kids come from and we know where they're going, and that's been a tremendous benefit. The other thing that's really powerful is this idea of the teachers helping each other curate appropriate resources and talking about things that they do in the classroom to help provide support for each other, and that's just been an amazing opportunity. The teachers, they learn about one another, they develop relationships, and it's really powerful to be in a room with, the high school teacher asking questions of the second grade teacher and the third grade teacher, making arrangements to partner with the junior high teacher. It's a really powerful experience, and we've been able to leverage that for English language arts, science, and math. And I'm actually going to have Laura talk about the Science Academy, just to give you a sense of what that looks like.
Thank you. Good evening. The Science Teacher Academy met 3 times this past year. We met with science teachers K-12, so there was representatives from grade levels there. We met in September, December, and March, and we designed, the design of the academy is for teachers to be a leader in 3 important ways: by facilitating curriculum conversations, collaborating with peers when having professional conversations, and engaging peers in the curriculum mapping process, so that peer-to-peer work. The academy had expectations of this leader at these sessions to establish a scope and sequence for your grade level, not for everyone, but for you and your grade level, and then to have conversations about what that looks like with your peers. So science in particular, the teachers were asked to write an NGSS, Next Generation Science Standards, a storyline, which is a narrative that describes the content and rationale for these performance expectations for this discipline. We asked teachers to deconstruct the standards, classify the learning targets, and then match common assessments to the targets. The next piece in this work was organizing the standards into bundles to create 3-dimensional learning experiences for the students in the science classroom, and then develop NGSS units around a puzzling phenomenon, what might be interesting for those students to be learning in terms of that content. So creating a common understanding of 3-dimensional learning was very important. 3-dimensional learning means it's the the content called the DCIs, or disciplinary core ideas, the science practices, and the cross-cutting concepts. So taking all of those, tying them together, and creating and weaving a unit and lessons and assessments. The exciting part of our last meeting was that at our the last Science Academy, was that we created a common science assessment, K-12, in terms of three-dimensional learning, and so we all, K-12, will be assessing students with those same standards in a pre- and post-assessment for gauging our learning. So it was really very exciting. I'm kind of a science nerd, so I really, of course, loved it. So that's science. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura's explanation of the richness of that experience give you a sense of what that when we have those teacher academies, what that means. We started, we only were able to do one math teacher academy, but it was a great experience because we spent time engaging in discussion about what does the mathematical practices look like in the classroom, K through 12, and then we were able to go out to another school district and make a site visit and visit with teachers from another district and talk about what that looks like for them, and then we learned from them and brought some of those ideas and strategies back to our district. So that work is going to be ongoing. The focus for the next part of our discussion is the work of data team, and Tracy's going to give you some details about what that looks like. It's important to understand that we've always had access to benchmark data, at least for the past many years, with MAP and Ames Web and other types of data that those tests provide for us. But this idea of really connecting that data to the instructional practices and helping teachers understand, present it in a way that's interpretable for teachers and not just administrators, and help teachers be able to look at that data and make some decisions based on what they notice about their students. And that's not just being able to provide interventions, but also how can we improve the experience for our students who already know the standards and who are at the high end of their of those test scores, and to ensure that all students, regardless of where they begin in those benchmark assessments, achieve the appropriate growth. This picture kind of illustrates like literally what it looks like. It's teachers having access to data and having inquiry-based discussions about what that looks like and how they can implement new practices and meet the needs of all of our students. Tracy, you want to give us a little input? Introduction?
So the day-to-day teams are very important to the coach's job because that's something that they lead at least 3 times a year. And those times that we lead these meetings are usually after the standardized benchmark assessments have been given to the students. So the fall, the winter, and the spring. The coaches, prior to the meetings, gather all of the data and put it into a format that is easy for the teachers to understand and to read. The coaches before the meetings analyze the data beforehand so that we know as coaches what we're looking at and have questions to go ahead and lead our data team meetings. When we're meeting with the teams during day-to-day, one of the things that we're doing is we're looking at all of the student data, and we're looking with the team at how are our students growing and how can we help them to be even more successful. So those are some of the questions that we have. Not only are we looking at maybe some individual students, but then we look at classes as a whole, and we have those discussions with the teachers about how can we help you differentiate in the classroom. What can we do to support you as coaches to help our students grow and be successful? And these are just some of the roles that we do during our data team meetings. Thank you.
So with regard to the next steps, we plan to expand and to leverage the Teacher Academy model of professional development. We've had tremendous positive feedback on the impact that those experiences have made We want to shift the focus of the ELA curriculum development from really delving into what the reading standards mean to what writing looks like. And then also, much of the work that we've been doing for professional development has really been focused on what does teaching look like, and how can we change the way the teaching practices are to integrate these new standards and to integrate new models of teaching and learning, such as the comprehensive literacy model and math instruction. And that kind of focus was really necessary to make all of those types of changes that the Common Core standards require. But what we're probably going to end up seeing more so is really student-driven focus, and to be able to track assessment data and to be able to respond to that assessment data so that we can quantify the work that we do based on student achievement. And for example, we're going to put into place a new tool called Mastery Connect. The high school's been using it with some success this past year, and so we're going to roll that out district-wide. And what that'll provide for us is some really strong methods of looking at common assessments and like assessments and assessments that are aligned to the standards so that we can identify more carefully what impact on the students that all of these changes are being made. So that's pretty much a wrap-up of everything I needed to tell you tonight, and so I wish any questions at all or any comments or?
Well, I have one. First of all, thank you very much. It was good to see in some of that and how the instructional coaches work. So I've had this question that, so we're very fortunate that we have K through 12 because we can work, like you say, vertically. And we are also fortunate that we have veteran instructors who have been around for a long time. My question is, and I don't even know if this is something that you can answer right now, but so we've moved to Common Core standards, and a lot of what we're doing is creating a curriculum. So how do you determine best practices? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
It's really based on understanding those standards really carefully, to be able to deconstruct the standard into learning targets, and then be able to look at the learning targets and make sure that we give our children a well-rounded experience. So when we break down a standard and we into learning targets, like what does that actually mean, we want to make sure it's not just that we want our kids to be able to memorize or have that kind of lower level thinking. We want to make sure our students are provided with opportunities where they have to think and process information. One of the things that Kevin and I have begun to do this year is this idea of an instructional practice inventory walkthrough. And we take a look at the learning experiences based on the amount of thinking skills the kids are doing. So we measure the amount of times that we see kids interacting to learn new things, using social interaction. We measure the number of times that we see students, using their critical thinking skills to take that knowledge and then apply it to something new. So best practices and the demands of the Common Core, if you really thoroughly understand it, which takes time and that takes some doing, it really is all about getting our kids to be critical thinkers, communicate effectively in all methods, speaking, writing, presenting. Giving children that well-rounded life experience in school is really something that the Common Core kind of lays that out. All of us do a lot to build our own capacity. So we work with Kelly Dobeck several times a year. The coaches and I attend coaching conferences where we interact with other coaches throughout the DuPage County area. We attend conferences, but more so the idea of interacting with other school districts is helping reinforce that. The other resource that we have, which is tremendous and is so valuable, is Tiffany Treese from SASSET. She's been able to really support the coaches, particularly with data. So your question is kind of like complicated, and the answer is long, but basically it's all of those ideas of being able to build our capacity to understand what's required of those students, and the idea of articulating the standards K-12 has been really powerful because we know what the students need to be prepared to be successful when they leave here, when they leave high school. And so to be able to, and the great thing about those standards is that they are carefully crafted so that they build complexity gradually, and that the standards are the same, the power standards are the same, K through 12. So there's no sort of disconnect. You know, fourth grade does this standard but isn't connected at all to any other standard. So that's engaging in that kind of learning has been really powerful. Does that help?
It does, because, you know, it's like when Common Core started, you know, of course, everybody thought it was terrible, you know, because it's different. But it's interesting to see how it's applied after a number of years since we've been doing this. But, so, I guess the only way I can describe it is there isn't some book on the shelf you go pull off and say, this is the best practice.
There isn't.
Right? I mean,
and
it's trying to find a way to teach the students these standards, and what you're explaining is the different ways that we do it, by teachers teaching each other and going to conferences and talking with other districts and that. So the best practice is trying to find how to make sure that the student is getting that knowledge.
The most challenging aspect of our work that we do, and this is the part that we probably have had the most amount of support, is determining how will we know when the student is successful. When we write assessments, we have to make sure that they not only show us sort of those low-level skills, but we need to provide opportunities for our students to show what they know in a more complex method, and in a way that requires critical thinking skills, even for our littlest ones. That has been the most challenging, and that has been the part of this process that we've spent the most amount of time doing. And the other thing that's important is you realize that, you know, when I first became a teacher, they handed me a textbook, like a teacher's manual, and said, there you go, page 1 to 300. So what we're doing is we're engaging a lot of discourse and a lot of discussion, and sometimes it can get pretty tense because we have to understand what those standards mean, and we have a lot of discussion about what does that look like and how will we know the kids are successful. And that we learn a lot from that discourse, and we're modeling really good learning by having those discussions as teachers. And so we bring that to our students to understand what, you know, how that critical thinking and how that is all developed. So the idea of the standards being so bad, they're not. They're, you know, remarkable. They prepare our students for the future. They prepare our students for a world that we can't even imagine.
Well, it's just when it started, everybody just threw up their hands and said, oh, we can't do it, you know, whatever.
Change is really hard.
It is interesting, though, to see, you know, like the different things that go on here in our district to get to those goals. So,
Do you feel the teachers themselves through this process kind of discover new things about what they're really good at, and then can kind of tailor some of their instruction playing off their strengths so that
The teachers
they're
have
able to really...
They really do have a great deal of autonomy, and that's really the key to the success of the coaching program, is that teachers do have autonomy in terms of how they engage in learning and teaching for their students. And the best part about this experience is the increased nature of collaboration in the district. This idea of the teachers working together all the time for every experience, professional development experience, teachers working together and helping each other. That's really the basis or the foundation for PLC. Like, I'm really good at this. Can you help me? Because you know, you seem to, your kids are successful, now can you help me build my skills? And the coaches, like with every experience they have supporting teachers, they're co-learners in the process. They don't come in as, we're experts, you know, just ask me, I can tell you anything. It's more about, let's be reflective in what we're doing, and let's learn together and find out based on the data if we're successful, and to really leverage the knowledge and skills of our colleagues.
And overall, I think it seems like so much more progress is being made in education through this type of collaboration with the teachers than many of the programs that give us our teachers in higher education. I mean, when you come out, I remember when I came out of secondary ed, and they would have plopped me in a classroom, and I would have had to figure, you know, you wouldn't have had this kind of support network in place, and you would have really had to struggle, you know, to find your place and to find what you're good at. And it's as a new teacher coming in, it has to be give you an extra sense of confidence that you have all this experience to lean on and to get you moving faster, so that you master teaching at a much faster pace than you would without this type of experience with your peers.
It also facilitates this idea of reflection and being reflective practitioners, because you know there's so much change, and it's all coming at the same time, that you never really feel like a master, but you are always learning, and that is really powerful, and that is makes the profession really important and engaging. And one of the other thing we do in this district, which is really important, is our mentor program for our new teachers is essential.
It kind of institutionalizes flexibility into the profession, probably more so than it has ever been.
More than ever.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the first reading of proposed student handbook revisions.
Good evening. I first want to say thank you to Mr. Carey and the school board for having me here tonight for the first reading of our handbook revisions for the 2017-2018 school year. There will be two parts to tonight's presentation. The first part is going to be based on the process, and the second part will be the specific language for revisions. My name is Kevin Weck. I'm one of the assistant principals and dean of students at Westmont High School. Just to kind of start with the process, during the course of the beginning of the year, first semester, up until spring break, we encourage our teachers and admin teams to take notes and to look through the handbook to figure out what's working well and if they want to make any revisions for the following school year. Spring break then, I discussed with our admin team that everyone should send out the revision template to their staff and ask for any of the specific revisions they'd like to see for the following school year. That's what we did over spring break. Teachers and faculty had 2 weeks to upload on the Google Doc any revisions they'd like to see for next school year. And after the 2 weeks, we then ask parents and students to come in and to meet to discuss some of the revisions that our faculty put together, and then also any revisions that they'd like to see for the following school year. That happened last Tuesday. After that, then I submit it to our district office. They then share it with the school board, and this is the first reading. So the second reading then will be at the next school board meeting, and after that we submit it for printing, and that's hopefully done by the beginning of August. That's the process. And feel free anytime tonight if you want to ask a question for clarification, or if you want to interject, feel free to do that. Moving on to the specific revisions, the elementary building does not actually have any revisions they'd like to see for next school year. I think that's also a good sign that it seems like things are working well for them there. Does anybody have any questions on the elementary? Anything you'd like to see? Okay, moving on to our junior high handbook revisions. Mr. Jonak submitted just really one revision he'd like to see for next school year, and it seems that revolves around eligibility for athletes. And it comes down to, and I'm just going to kind of summarize some of this or give you the gist of it. It says eligibility must be obtained on a weekly basis. Grade eligibility reports will be sent every Friday morning to coaches, and then a student with at least one F may not participate in the game the following week. And typically, that must be because Mr. Jonak maybe came into some problems because of the vague language that was in the handbook earlier. So he'd like to see those changes for next school year. Okay. Any questions on the junior high? All right, moving on to the high school. I'm just going to kind of pull out a couple of the highlights that I have here. If you flip to the second page, page 32 on the left-hand column, that is in the handbook right now, and the revisions that we're going to add are going to be the available emergency medications. I think it's important that we specify that we have the EpiPens and Narcan available on site at the high school in case of emergency. I think it's also important to communicate that with our parents. I've had questions asked of me about that, so I'm glad we're able to include that for next year. Another highlight that I have would be on page 45. We have many of our students, and approximately about 25, who attend TCD every year, and that's in the morning from 8 basically until about 11:15. It's a high demand, so I think we wanted to include some specific language that says a student has the opportunity the year before they go to TCD to submit an application for that. We then get our team together to discuss whether or not this is a good candidate for TCD, and just also let them know that we do have limitations in terms of the numbers of students who go for TCD. But we wanted to change that language around just to make sure that parents were aware of that. Another highlight that we have here is on page 48. Just for attendance purposes, college or university visit is an excused absence as long as we have proper documentation. Some of this is I personally included. Page 54, a hat. It says hats, headgear, and sunglasses. That's the old language. We'd like to include bandanas and hoodies. That seems to have picked up in our building, so I just want to make sure that we have that in the handbook for our students to be aware of. And let's see if there's anything else here I want to highlight. Other than that, a lot of our changes have come down to just kind of some changes in terms of the language, being more specific, grammatical mistakes. But as of right now, these would be the changes for the high school. Does anybody have any questions or need clarification on any of the language we have right now?
I like the excused absence
Yeah.
addition of college university visit.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
We want to encourage students to feel comfortable and, with parent support to visit some of the universities they plan on going to. It's obviously a big commitment financially and lifelong.
What does the documentation look like from a post-visit? I mean, is there something that the college gives the student that we're asking to
Well,
be turned in?
so typically parents will call and say, my son or daughter is going to visit, we'll just say Northern Illinois University. We ask the student then when they go on this visit that they'll typically have a tour, and they can ask that their tour guide, or when they first arrive at the university, for some documentation that just says, that this person was here on this day.
Okay, so
And
the colleges do have something they give their students?
yeah.
Okay.
And if it gets to the point where a student's, being abusive with it, where, they're on their 6th or 7th university visit in a span of a month, those might, create some concerns that we can work with the family on. Because it's obviously important for them to be in school as well. Any other questions or concerns?
I guess the only thing that kind of has come up that I have, kind of a question about.
Sure.
Is the eligibility rules. Came up in our household this year, and I guess my question had to do with students with IEPs. Because my experience is the grades can be really good, and then they can tank real quick, and they can go up and down and up and down so, erratically, that the eligibility to participate in events, could be on 1 week, off 1 week, on 1 week. And in my mind, some of that is related to the student's abilities. And I don't know how to address that, or if it can be addressed, or if it's something that's out of, because I know sporting associations and whatnot have their own set of rules that we kind of adopt. But it is something that kind of was highlighted to me this year, and I didn't quite know
Well, the state so our students have to they have to be passing 5 classes to be considered eligible. But then that also, that's tied in also with the specific coaches' policies. They may say, hey, you need to be passing all of your classes to be a participant with our respective sport or extracurricular activity. It depends on the individual team or event that's going to take place. We also, every Tuesday, we meet as a data team to look at, our students who are on the F list. And hopefully by that time, we've had a chance to catch some of these students, to work with the teacher, to, meet with the student, call home, find out what's going on, why is it that this student has an F? Look up, is it because of the missing test? Is it because, they're not turning in any assignments? Is it a skill deficiency? And then that's typically when we want to use the Wednesday to get them as much support as possible. So that we may pull a student to work with an individual TA or, even ask them to come in early on that Thursday morning. Because really we want to support them in terms of being able to participate as much as possible. And as a team, we try to catch that as quickly as possible. But obviously, we still have students who are failing multiple classes for more than a week. I hope that answers your question.
It kind of does. I mean, it's a very individual thing, so I
Yeah.
think it's something I can't really address in a global sense here. But it just, I feel in some ways, some of our students, they don't have all the opportunities that that many students have. And so when they get an opportunity to participate in something extracurricular and it gets yanked from them for this
Yes.
particular reason, it's very difficult. And I mean, as a parent, you want to use these things to motivate your child and you want
Sure.
them to do their best, instinctually. But it sometimes doesn't happen, and yet it's almost a punishment when it comes around that you have to implement the rule. This is the rule. You know what I mean?
Sure,
And
absolutely.
it's a very complicated situation, and it's when you have a child with an IEP, because there's so
Yeah.
many factors in there. But I'd hate to see them excluded from something that they're really good at, or trying to be good at.
Yeah.
Whether
Especially
it's a sporting event, a
if it's
musical
a
thing, or
skill
whatever.
deficient,
it's
skill
a
deficiency,
real-
yeah. That's where we'd want to partner up with that teacher and then also the coach or the supervisor of that extracurricular to find out how can we support the student in being successful in the classroom in terms of the skill deficiency, or get them as much intervention as possible so that they can participate. That's the last thing we ever want to do, is be able to, to pull away their opportunity to shine in terms of, extracurriculars or sports.
Right.
But it really, we have to come together as partners in this process to work together for that student, and that really is opening up the communication lines. So I'd recommend any parent, to send an email to a teacher or to admin, and we can kind of get the ball rolling if that's happening. We definitely do not want to pull away some of those privileges when a student's struggling in classroom and they're putting forth their best effort.
So it's just it's a kind of a unique angle that
Sure.
came up in our thing, and I don't know how often it comes up in other families, but it's
Yeah,
just something that's
it's a valid
worth
concern.
a little bit of exploration, I think.
Thank you, Joe.
That brings up a question. What if the coach is not a district employee? How is that coach made aware if
So
there's
our
a
AD,
student
our
failing?
athletic director, we pull the grades every week on Friday, and we share out, because they're not ineligible the minute they're failing. So every week, students have a chance. If they're failing on Tuesday, they have up until that Friday really to pick that grade up, and that's why it's good. It's excellent that we have data team on Tuesday, and we have, the ASAP time on Wednesday. They have up until that time on Friday. What happens is that our AD pulls those grades of any students who are participating in extracurriculars, and then they share that with the faculty, including all coaches, as to, if they have a member of their team or extracurricular that's ineligible, that they really need to speak with this student, reach out to the family, and, try to support them in bringing up those grades. A lot of times coaches will say, hey, on Monday I'd like to see you, instead of coming to practice, I want you to work with that teacher for an hour, and then come over to practice when you're done. And that way, coach is supporting the academic piece as well as the athletic piece or extracurricular.
So what happens if there's an F because a teacher didn't put something in the system? Because I know that that's happened in the past.
Yeah.
If that's not, so it's not a homework deficiency, so is it just,
Well-
are they looked at individually?
Well, on Tuesdays, our students, they receive, that's when we meet with them and we give them the information, hey, you know, you're struggling, you're failing in this class, in this class. Students have the opportunity then to say, well, you know, I turned in this assignment, or, you know, it should be updated. And that really sends a signal to the student and to us, like, hey, we need to speak with this teacher to make sure that, you know, if there's a paper that's been turned in, you know, that needs to be uploaded so that the student doesn't suffer ineligibility, or that they have to stay for ASAP time on Wednesday. And since we've been refining our process, the ASAP time is really, our students are very aware of the process, and they are doing everything they can on that Tuesday and Wednesday morning to have that form filled out by their teacher saying, hey, you know, that their student has completed what's necessary to be passing this class. They don't have to stay for ASAP, and that the grade's going to be updated in a timely manner. So, yeah, there are some times, though, that we have to speak with teachers and just ask that they take a look at their grade book and that they update that as quickly as possible. But it's good that we have many eyes on this in terms of the F-list, and then working with the teachers and the students to help support them in terms of decreasing the number of Fs that we have.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you again.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, then we have the presentation of monthly financials.
The January financials are presented, and during the month, we finally received some money from the state. We received $405,000 from the state. $262,000 of that was for fiscal year 16, so they're finally getting us caught up on that. They still owe us $11,723 from last year, and then $622,000 for payments for this year. In the Ed Fund, we received $11,000 from FY16 payments, and there's $371,000 of fiscal year 17 payments that are vouchered that have not been received. Now, during the month of April, we're starting to see the first quarter categoricals being paid. So, but we're, they're behind, a little bit more behind than normal this year. In terms of the transportation fund, we did receive our fiscal year 16 payments, $157,000, and then they owe us $251,000 for this year. So again, our revenues are a little bit behind because they're paying a little bit more slowly than prior years. As far as expenditures go, in the Ed Fund, they're comparable to the prior years. In the O&M fund, again, we're 43% spent to date. Last year, we were 60% spent to date, but again, it's because our projects were being paid out of the capital, out of the O&M fund last year versus capital projects fund. And then in the transportation fund, we're well below average, and again, we're still, at this time, waiting for Septran to get things corrected for us. So we will make it our goal to have it done before the end of the fiscal year, so. And then fund balances, student activity accounts, and investments are included, as well as the launch report. And you will start to see our investments tapering down, again, because of the late payments from the state. I want to make sure we have enough cash on hand to make payments, and then also just in case our tax revenue would be late. I want to make sure we're able to make all of our payments without having to do any last-minute borrowing. So, any questions?
Okay. Superintendent's report?
Just one item to report. Last week was the Westmont Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Bureau annual awards meeting, and one of the awards that they give out is a Teacher of the Year. And this year, with two of the nominees, they were having a difficult time deciding between two, and so they decided to award co-Teachers of the Year to two of our Westmont teachers, Chris Meyer, who is a 6th grade math teacher, and April Beal is a special ed teacher, both at the junior high. Were named co-educators of the year by the Westmont Chamber of Commerce, so congratulations to them.
president of the Westmont Chamber of Commerce is our own Mr. Carey. And I forgot that was coming until I saw some of the pictures, so, so congratulations on wearing that hat. And, all joking aside, it really is nice to, you know, to see you're out there in the community doing that, so congratulations to you.
It's always nice when one of our special educators gets acknowledged like that, because the population of students they work with is small. They don't get the exposure a lot of times that some of our other teaching staff do in the broader community. So it's nice to see that come through as a nomination and a co-win. So congratulations to both.
Okay, and are you done?
Yes, I am.
Are there any board reports? Are there any public comments? Okay, then upcoming meeting, kindergarten open house, April 26th, 12:30 at Manning. Spring band concert. Do we know who that is? Is that the high school? April 27th at 7?
Thursday.
But is that the high school's?
Yeah.
High school band.
The high school band concert?
The junior high.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the high school.
That's the junior
Junior high.
high? Okay.
Junior high is this
Okay.
Thursday.
So Westmont Junior High Spring Band Concert is April 27th at 7 o'clock at the high school. Okay, Miller Kindergarten Roundup, May 3rd, 12:30 at Miller School. Then the Miller Spring Concert is May 3rd at 7 o'clock at Westmont High School. Okay, May 4th, Spring Choral Concert. Do we know what school it is? Make sure we get those. Okay, well, there's going to be a spring choral concert on May 4th at 7 at the Westmont High School. Don't know what school it is. We'll find that out. Then the District Jazz Festival is May 9th at 7 o'clock at Westmont High School. And the next school board meeting is May 16th at
6:30.
at 6:30, and that is at the high school. That will be the student recognition meeting as well. Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing personnel issues, student discipline, and probable litigation, and superintendent evaluation.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mrs. Notbush.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we will not have a vote after closed.
We will agree.